Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. We have historically seen Hugh Freeze and the Auburn Tigers get very active in the spring transfer portal window. Now, I do still think that Hugh Freeze and Auburn will look to enhance their roster heading into 2025. I mean, that's what Hugh Freeze has shown us throughout his time at Auburn. Hey, if there's an opportunity to get more talent on this roster, we are going to pursue that opportunity. But I will start with this. I think that Auburn sits in a different position than we've seen the last couple of years under Hugh Freeze's tenure. I mean, you go back to 2023, there were holes all over this roster. I mean, and that wide receiver room going into 2023, if you were a warm body that had a beating heart, Auburn would look to add you onto the roster because they didn't have any quality wide receivers that year. You look at where this Auburn roster sits heading into 2025, it's something we've been very vocal about. That there are not many holes on this roster, specifically on the offensive side of the football. I know some Auburn fans might want to get some offensive line help, and we'll have that conversation in the next couple of minutes. I just don't know how many players that will be in the spring transfer portal that would help Auburn out on the offensive side of the football. That's how good I think the personnel is on the offensive side of the football. Now you go to the defense. I think this defense is going to be really good. You like what you see on paper, but there are some question marks, right? Depth in the middle of the defensive line, veteran linebacker play is probably another question mark. Now, as that spring transfer portal window has officially opened up, we got some names that I think would be really good fits for this Auburn program. I want to talk about a name that seems to have really emerged as a potential target for Auburn. Talk about a few other names before we get into it. As always, to the Auburn fans, would love to hear from you guys. I'm going to have some takes regarding this Auburn roster that might be considered hot. And look, the Auburn fans who are checking this episode out, y'all the fans who live and breathe this program, that follow this program 12 months a year, would love to hear whether you agree or disagree in the comment section. Best part about talking football at this time is it's really only the hardcore fans. The casual fans are watching basketball these days. And I know Auburn fans watch basketball too, but the comments that we get in the comment section are from Auburn fans that live and breathe this program. And we have a lot of good discussion. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's start with a portal target that has seemingly emerged for Auburn, and that is in the middle of that defensive line, which I think a lot of Auburn fans who follow this program pretty closely would say, hey, wouldn't mind, another body kind of getting injected into this Auburn defensive line. You look at it and say, hey, we like Malik Blockton going into year two. We've heard really good things from Jordan Crawford and Malik Autry coming out of spring. Like those are two guys that as freshmen will play for Auburn in the 2025 year. But from a depth standpoint, are we good enough? Especially when you have the conversation around Auburn, like what are your goals going into 2025? To me, it's not to go 6-6. 6-6 for Auburn with the talent they have on this roster would be significantly underperforming. You want to compete to get to an SEC championship game. I truly think that's where this Auburn team from a talent standpoint sits. If you want to compete in the back end for the SEC championship, you got to be deep along the defensive line. Now, Jay Hardy, who's a familiar face to Auburn fans, right? Committed to Auburn out of high school, spent a season there in 2020, I believe, transferred to Liberty over the last couple of years, has been a solid football player for Liberty. I'll start with this. Jay Hardy would make sense because he's a guy that you can bring in who's going into his fifth year of college football that could probably give you 10 to 15 quality snaps a game for Auburn. He's not going to be a first-team All-SEC guy. He's not going to be an All-American, but he'll be quality depth. Do I think Auburn potentially could do better in terms of a target that emerges in the portal? Yeah. And so I think that if you're Hugh Freeze in Auburn, especially because Jordan Crawford and Malik Autry have kind of emerged as guys we trust going into 2025, you're probably not as desperate as you thought you might have been going into spring practice. What I would do if I'm Auburn here is keep Jay Hardy hot. You get that relationship back going. But let's wait and see what other names pop in the portal, because I do think there could be some other names that Auburn could go out and get that at probably better football players. If Auburn added Philip Bleedy last year during this time. I think Philip Bleedy is significantly a better football player than where Jay Hardy is right now coming from Liberty. Here's a name that I really do kind of like. And you know that these interior defensive line positions, they are going to be priorities for a lot of college football teams. Braxton Felly from Provo, Utah, spent his first couple of years at Boise State. He intrigues me. He kind of has that fire hydrant build at 6'1", 300 pounds. Again, he is not physically blessed like guys like Malik Autry or a guy like Jordan Crawford. There was a reason he was a low 3-star recruit that went to Boise State. The dude's kind of a junkyard dog, and you're looking for a guy to give you 10 to 15 quality snaps a game as a rotational depth piece. I think Braxton Felly can do it. He started the last 2 years at Boise State, a guy that you feel like, one, plays extremely hard, which is a question we have about Jay Hardy. It was a question mark when he was at Auburn. I can tell you it was a question mark when you go to the Liberty film as well. Braxton Felly, you don't have any question marks with that. Like, this is a guy that is going to play hard. You check out the film against Penn State in that college football playoff game against what I thought was one of the better offensive lines in the country. Thought Braxton Felly played pretty solid. Like, this would be a name that I think would make sense for Auburn in terms of, hey, solidifying the three deep in that inside of the defensive line. I think the last position group that you're probably looking at, and again, to me, this kind of highlights what Hugh Freeze has done with this roster. We're sitting here a couple of months out from kicking off in 2025 saying we're just kind of looking for some rotational pieces and maybe a starting linebacker that has some experience. Andrew Simpson from Boise State, another Boise State cat, watched them both together. One, he's played a lot of football. Like that's what Auburn's probably looking for the most, because I look at the athletic profiles that Auburn has, starting with a guy like DeMarcus Riddick, but some of the young cats on this football team too. The ceiling is awfully high for Auburn at the linebacker position. Like there's a real reality where Auburn's actually pretty dang good at linebacker. But as of right now, it's kind of a question mark because none of these guys have played significant football during their college football careers. Andrew Simpson's a guy that does not have the athletic profile juice that someone like DeMarcus Riddick has, but he's a guy that's played over 1,400 snaps, 141 tackles, 32 tackles for a loss, 12 and a half sacks. Very good job kind of getting behind the line of scrimmage and making some negative plays, which is very important in the DJ Durkin offense. Or defense, excuse me. I think the fits there, but I think just as importantly, the type of linebacker. A guy that, look, he ain't going to come into Auburn and be a first-team All-American, but a guy that can give you that veteran presence that it seemingly is something Hugh Freeze wants. Andrew Simpson would make a lot of sense too. There's a couple of those linebackers. Andrew Simpson's probably my favorite, that you maybe have a question mark if they're good enough to play in the SEC from an athletic profile standpoint, but bring you the steady experience that you desire. It's the kind of name you're going for. Now, I think the last position that some Auburn fans have been talking about is offensive line help. Let's dive into it, because I really do think Auburn's in a decent spot. And I think where I would start here is, I know that some of the reports out of spring practice, especially in that open practice on Saturday that we just saw, the offensive line didn't look great. Number one, I think the Auburn defensive line is pretty dang good. We're going to be one of the better units in the SEC, in my opinion, in the 2025 year. But number two, I mean, Connor Lew wasn't playing. Xavier Chaplin hasn't played all spring. Like, you were missing two of your bigger pieces on the offensive line, and Auburn's kind of shuffling the deck a little bit on the offensive line. I think the fact that Braden Joyner decided to hit the transfer portal probably tells you where Auburn is at on the offensive line from a talent proposition, because I think Braden Joyner can play. I think Braden Joyner is going to transfer somewhere and play immediately in 2025. The fact that he needed to hit the portal with 3 years of eligibility remaining tells me I think Auburn's talent is pretty good on the offensive line. I think the second question would be, look, are you going to find a better tackle than Xavier Chaplin, Xavier Miller, and Mason Murphy? Maybe. And hey, maybe if that tackle does emerge and Auburn's question marks are bigger than I perceive on the offensive line, maybe you become a player. For me, it's only on the right side because I think Xavier Chaplin is a plug and play starter at left tackle, and it's going to be hard to bring in another high end starting body. At right tackle, it's two guys that have played a lot of power four football. And I don't know if you'll see a right tackle in the transfer portal that offers you better play. And so if you're Auburn, you might just want to focus on number one, just retaining this roster, keeping guys like Perry Thompson or Morris Williams out of the transfer portal. I don't know if the opportunity will present itself to improve on the offensive line because one, I think it's a solid starting five guys that have played a lot of football. And just as importantly, I don't think you have massive question marks about the depth of this offensive line either. Again, with a guy like Braden Joyner transferring out, it's a little bit of a hit, but I also think it tells you where a guy like Ty Buster might be. I know he's been working at tackle, maybe DeAndre Carter as well. Auburn's in a different spot. Like to me, you're just putting the cherry on top of this thing and making sure you answer the last lingering questions heading into 2025. But we've seen Hugh Freeze when the opportunity presents itself to make this roster better. You have seen Hugh Freeze take advantage, and I'm kind of interested to see what happens over the next couple of weeks. The one name, hey, if we get a difference maker in the middle of that defensive line emerge, I do think you'll see Hugh Freeze and Auburn be a player. Outside of that, I think a lot of boxes are checked here. This is a team that can be really good. We'll close it out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later. Peace.